Every time I post a Q&A, many people always ask or wonder, Trevor, why don't those people just leave? They are struggling. Their men are cheating on them. Their wives are cheating on them. They're being physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused. Why are they holding on to that relationship even when it's clearly not good for them? Abusive and toxic relationships are something quite puzzling to the outsider. Even when the abuse is so evident, people keep wondering, why would someone stay in such a bad relationship? You may try to explain it with logic and even convince the victim of abuse that it's completely incomprehensible that they will stay in that kind of relationship that is so obviously flawed and damaging to their self-worth, emotional well-being, and even their physical health at times. You may even try to explain it with logic and even convince the victim of abuse that it's completely incomprehensible that they still stay in a relationship that is obviously flawed, like when physical abuse is involved. Yet there are many fundamental reasons that someone would stay in a bad relationship, a relationship that is damaging and unhealthy. Yes, there are reasons. So if you are in such a relationship, this video may help you realize your own reasons. If you are not in a toxic relationship, this video is aimed to raise awareness in you and be more compassionate in your judgment of those who stay. Now, people who stay in toxic relationships have these reasons. 1, what if it gets better? What if I'm just not trying hard enough? What if I'm giving up too soon? Isn't not ever giving up what I'm supposed to do? Because a crappy relationship should be better than no relationship at all. Kangume. What if my next relationship is worse? What if I never find anyone else? I am so scared to be alone. Yeah, fear of loneliness is a thing. That is a reason. Then we do have the fear of the unknown. And then we do have a reason of, my goodness, what if leaving is a mistake? What if I just have to try a little bit harder? Oh my God, what if I miss them? And then we do have the classic one, children. However, the important thing to remember is that children learn about relationships from their parents. For any parent out there who is staying in a bad relationship because of kids, remember that if children see abuse happening, this will have a much bigger impact on them than separation would. In the future, children are more likely to get trapped in abusive relationship if they have seen this kind of behavior between their parents. And then we do have low self-esteem. People with low self-esteem tend to get in abusive relationships, and the abuse further deteriorates their self-esteem and self-worth. If you do not think you are worthy enough and do not value yourself much, then it makes sense why you would get involved with someone who feeds these beliefs even more. Maybe you believe you cannot get any better. This person you have, hey man, he's the best there is, she's the best there is. Or that you're permanently damaged or broken and only toxic love can come your way. There are people who do believe these things. And maybe you think that you don't deserve love, or that's the best partner who could ever stay close to you anyway. People with low self-esteem also have low expectations and low comparison levels. They do not expect many benefits from a relationship, but instead problems. So their low expectations are fulfilled and they stay in that relationship. Alternatively, they may compare their situation with one that would be way worse than what they're going through. For instance, at least he doesn't hit me, or at least she comes back to her sweet self quickly, or at least he comes back home, by minimizing the impact of the negative traits of their partner, they normalize the situation and they don't regard it as too bad. Now, this creates an illusion that the abuse is sustainable. As mentioned earlier, we learn to love in familiar ways. Any form of abuse or neglect during childhood increases the possibility of getting involved in abusive relationships in adulthood, because the kind of love that one has known is the kind of love that they possibly will end up in. When you form the idea that love is supposed to hurt, then you are more inclined to stay in an unhealthy relationship because it confirms that belief. Then we do have people who have kind of, they find red flags, they feel like home. You've normalized them because they are familiar, right? You grew up seeing mommy being beaten, you grew up seeing daddy being physically or verbally abused. That becomes normal. So growing up, I would be here telling you, but oh my God, Sham, why are you with such an abusive guy? And in your head, you're like, what do you mean? I saw mommy go through it. I saw daddy go through it. This is nothing. Abuse has become familiar, right? So that is also a reason why people stay in these relationships, because even in that line of dysfunction, they grew up seeing it. There are some needs that are still being met. I don't know if that makes sense. So I've seen mommy being beaten. If my husband beats me, that is okay. My mom survived. She stayed. But guess what? At least he still comes home. I just want to feel like I'm loved. I just want to feel like this person can still come back to me. That is a need met in the line of dysfunction that you're in. Those are 2 points. Red flags have been normalized. Even in the line of dysfunction, there are some needs that are still being met for this person. Those are 2 reasons. And then we have trauma. Do you know why we keep telling you to please work on your childhood wounds before you get into a relationship? Please work on your childhood trauma. Yeah, you don't have to heal all of it before marriage, but at least acknowledge it and work on it. It is because trauma causes dissociation from unpleasant and distressing experiences. We can easily disconnect emotionally from something that hurts us in order not to hurt anymore. In abusive relationships, that is indeed what happens. The victim detaches from negative aspects and only focuses on the positive ones, which in turn become even more favorable in their perception. If you are struggling with this, I have a few questions for you to consider. Number 1, what are the benefits you perceive from staying in this kind of relationship? Number 2, are these benefits more valuable than the negative aspects of the relationship? Number 3, what negative aspects are you detaching from in order to amplify the positive aspects of your partner? Another one, how is this situation sustainable in the long run? Honestly, if you want to stay married 10 years, is this sustainable? Another one, what are the lessons you have learned and those you still need to learn out of it? Well, another reason, on here we have fixers who think can change these kinds of people, right? When people are disconnected from the abuse, they can wind up downplaying it. They always go like, it's not that bad. It rains everywhere. All men are the same. All women are like that. As a result, they can often wind up feeling that they want to now help their partner. Because, if it rains everywhere, let me just fix the one I have. So then you become so focused on the positive aspects of the relationship that you see the abuser as a good person who just makes mistakes. You always tell yourself, there are challenges in marriages. He made a mistake. She made a mistake. Eventually, you start to view the abuser as a victim in some ways. And then you decide to stay in that relationship with the hope that you can fix your partner and believing that the abuse will stop. The cycle of this thinking is tied into the low self-esteem we talked about. Because the victim values the abuser more than they value themselves. They feel that it is their duty to help the abuser, even if it makes them unhappy. I have told you this 1,000 times over, that you are not a rehabilitation center for your badly raised or your badly behaved partner. It is not your role to change them. It is not your role to fix them. But unfortunately, this is a reason why some people stay. They feel like, I should fix him. I should fix her. I should help them. Well, let's see how far that goes. Another reason why people stay, there is something called intermittent reinforcement. Let me explain. If you are living in an abusive environment, you may see a sudden glimmer of hope every once in a while, or a brief reminder of the person you fell in love with. Right? He beats you today, and then tomorrow, my goodness, babe, would you like to go to Mombasa? I'm so sorry about everything I did. And you're like, oh, there he is. Oh, there she is, the person I fell in love with. That glimmer of hope. You're in an abusive environment, but there is hope. That is called intermittent reinforcement. This is often displayed through the cycle of violence in relationships. Outbursts of abusive behavior are followed by a period of apologies, love, affection. We've all been there, haven't we? Let's say an abuser becomes angry or violent anytime that you have a disagreement with them. It is easy to see that the relationship is unhealthy. But if that punishment is inconsistent, the victim convinces themselves that it was just a one-off and it won't happen again. Or they might even think that it must have been their fault that the abuser did whatever they did to them. Now, the same goes for positive behavior as well. If an abuser is apologetic, nice after every outburst, it loses its effect. But if they withhold the positive behavior and only display it sporadically, the victim may begin to crave it. The victim even then starts to think that maybe this time it will be different and maybe things will work out okay. Next time the abuser has the outburst, the cycle starts all over again. And then the victim follows the same pattern of thought because the abuse is not consistent. Does that make sense? If I abuse you today, and then tomorrow I'm doing something nice for you, I bought you a car, I bought you flowers, I'm taking you out, I'm apologizing, I'm crying, I'm down on my knees. Oh my God, it feels nice. You start to crave that positive reinforcement. And then when he does something again, you start to have hope of, no, he wouldn't do that. She wouldn't do that. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I triggered him. Maybe. And then again, the positive reinforcement comes in. By the way, studies into intermittent reinforcement show that this creates a similar response in the brain to drug addiction. Yeah, this can actually become very addictive. Actually, intermittent reinforcement is linked to addiction. It makes it very hard for victims to build a clear picture of their relationship. Intermittent reinforcement is the most insidious manipulation there is, bringing the victim into the absolute control of the abuser, who throws breadcrumbs of love and affection, right? Just to keep you hooked there and occasionally satisfy your emotional starvation. Every time they feel like you're starting to give up, you want to leave, they will do something nice and you're back. They're like, this time I know they're going to change. This time, before you know it, they're abusing you again. And every time you're low on emotional provision, they will come and do something nice again. That starvation, they will fill it up and you're like, oh my goodness, they're back. Addiction. Intermittent reinforcement is the foundation of the trauma bond that maintains abusive relationships. If you're following me on social media, you might have seen something called the trauma bond. I've talked about it. And I have 2 videos on my YouTube channel that explain what a trauma bond is in detail and its 7 stages. Please be sure to catch them so that you understand how trauma bonding can keep someone in an abusive relationship. This will be continued. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.